What's going on, guys? It's your boy Troy coming back at you with another video. And I haven't made a video in so long I could make like a bunch of excuses and be like, man, this, that, whatever. But I feel like every time I come on here, every time I come on here, like the beginning of a video, it's always me talking about how it's been a long time since I made the last video. So here's me taking accountability, and I'm not afraid to admit me being wrong, so it is what it is, but I'm sorry. I'm gonna make a video talking about someone. I'm not really be talking about the Juice WRLD documentary like only. I'm just gonna touch on that and then talk about other shit that's kind of related to it. But I just want to talk about the Juice WRLD documentary and how fucking amazing it was. Like, as I'm like trying not to be biased as much as I'm like a huge fan, obviously, but like just from a non-biased perspective, it's not a typical documentary where it's just someone's life and then it's just like an old guy commentating like when he was 16 he did like. Those documentaries are like so overdone, I think, at this point. And it wasn't like that at all. It was literally a vlog. So I mean, something for me, like someone that makes like vlogs and kind of makes videos, I really enjoyed it. He even says in like so many different bits, like he has all his drug uses in it. He has him buying drugs, like not obviously like they're recording him like physically doing the transaction or something, but they got like drug talk, like, oh, how much pills we need, how much this, that, whatever it is. And it's crazy because he would literally look at the camera so many times, like, don't cut that, like. And he wanted everything to be in. He wanted everyone to see his struggles. He wanted to see the lows. He wanted to see you're about to go on stage at Coachella, whatever it was, like the high moments and the low moments and whatever bullshit is in between, just him joking around with his friends and stuff. It was literally depressing, like, to watch. Like, it really was, like, a pain to watch someone really, like, go through so much and then was able to show it on film and show it on camera and wasn't afraid to show, like, his flaws and insecurities. And I feel like it was really touching. And like I said, he really knew. Like, it was like you kind of get like a feeling like he talks about it in his songs all the fucking time. He, like, even like his friends and stuff, like you could see like he knew the lifestyle he was living and he knew that his drug problem was bigger than him and he didn't seek help for it. So like, and he was fully okay with it. I mean, some people just choose to live like the life they live and it's easier to numb the pain and cover shit up. But obviously, like I said, it's not a sustained way of going about your problems. Like, you can numb shit, you can bury shit. You can bury shit all day, you can numb shit all the time. But the worst part about burying shit, I always thought it was interesting how when you bury something, like oh, you have an issue going on and you go to bury it or you try to hide it or whatever, it always seems to come out at the most inconvenient time. Like you might be burying your problem, whatever, not thinking anything of it, and then all of a sudden, like, it'd be like the most like random moment and then all your problems just like barrel out and you have like a breakdown. Like, that's why you really, like, I mean, it sounds so like in black and white, but you really should like try and like address the issues versus like covering them up and burying them and subduing them, because it doesn't really work for that long. So that's just like the honest truth. Like, it doesn't really last that long. You could try and bury it and hide it, but it will always come out at the end of the day. But oh no, enough about the Juice WRLD documentary, but I just wanted to talk about, I don't know, like, I told you this weird call to action, just talk about drugs and depression and stuff like that, because, like, especially with Euphoria going around, because I watched a Juice WRLD documentary and that was mainly on drugs, and just his, like, whole experience, and, like, obviously we know how that ended, and Euphoria is still going on. I'm not gonna spoil anything, chillax, but, it's just crazy watching, like, just how, not like how highlighted drug use is, because that's not what they're doing. It's not like 13 Reasons Why or something where they're like glorifying and shit. It really does feel like you're there, and it's like a really good story. Like, Euphoria is a really good show. If you haven't watched it, it's awesome. But I just highlighting it just because, like, the main character just has a huge drug problem, and it's very apparent, and she's like, but it's cool because she's like also, she kind of commentates over, like, the whole story. So she's, like, in the show, obviously, but she's also, like, narrating it. So it's a really cool, like, third-person kind of perspective. And she kind of just talks about depression and stuff, like, how her character feels and stuff. And it's really raw. And if you've ever been through, like, a rough patch in your life, or it feels like you're constantly in and out of, like, rough patches and stuff like that, it's definitely very hard. It feels like sometimes to get out of it, just because it feels like right when you're getting better, shit always gets worse. Have you ever been in like a hole or like a rut, or like you just been depressed for like a long time almost? When you start to feel better, it almost feels odd, like, if that makes sense. Like, and you almost are more inclined to do things that are almost like more self-destructive, or you feel like you do things that are more like it might be a subconscious thing, but like you do things to keep you kind of in your rut because that's what you're used to doing. But like something that's actually been really helping me with just getting out of my thoughts, and like, you ever feel like you have like just the same thought loops, or just like, it doesn't even have to be like that deep, but you just have the same like reoccurring thoughts, or just stuff you just can't get out of your head for whatever reason, you're self-doubting yourself, whatever, if you know me, you'll be like, Troy, no fucking way. Alright, guys, I've fucking been reading. I've been reading a book, bro. Like, it's actually crazy. Like, reading is fundamental. My parents always told me I didn't want to listen to them. But who would have thought, like, I experienced, like, I was, like, want to, like, experience things firsthand and, like, you know, hit my head 10 times and then finally get it. But it's like I'm only learning stuff from my head and, like, how I perceive things in my personal reality. But when I'm looking at it from... like someone else's perspective, like someone else is writing about it, it almost becomes more clear, and it's weird. Like, I've been learning a lot. Like, this book basically I'm reading, it's called The Power of Now. I got it from fucking TikTok, bro. Who would have thought TikTok's productive? Anyway, like, I got it from TikTok, and I have a whole ass Audible subscription now. It's fucking weird. I want to describe it. It's kind of like, it's separating your ego from your truest self. And if you don't really know what that means, like, ego is like more like your emotional body. I told you, it's gonna sound really weird when I say this, but it's almost like you have two people inside of you. Like, I told you, like, the person in your brain that, like, the thing in your brain that feeds you thoughts. Like, you hear, like, so you have anxious thoughts, like, oh, I look stupid, oh, this is so dumb, da-da-da. Like, you have these thoughts just in your head. That is your ego. That is not you. Like, that doesn't make any sense to you. I'm trying to explain it. But, like, the voice in your head that, like, tells you, like, what you're doing or, like, how you feel about certain things, that's your ego speaking, and that's not your truest self. And you be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, just because you hear something in your head, a lot of times you realize doesn't mean it's true. Like, if you might hear stuff like your brain might tell you, like, oh, I'm fat, skinny, tall, ugly, this, whatever, like, small, like, whatever you want, like, is something you don't like. Your brain feeds yourself all the time, but that doesn't mean it's true. Like, just because you have doubts doesn't mean you have to listen to them. Like, it doesn't, it's like a whole, the book kind of teaches you to separate yourself from your emotions, but not in, like, an unhealthy, like, detached, like, numbing kind of way, but, like, almost being the observer of your own thoughts. So, like, you might be like, oh, I'm anxious for some reason, and instead of, like, just feeling the anxious and identifying with the anxiety, you're taking yourself out of it and observing the emotion as the watcher. If that I told you, it's gonna sound really weird to some people. Everyone's had that moment where, like, your brain feeds you, like, this crazy theory, and then later on someone explains to you, like, what was actually going on, and you were way off. Like, you can't listen to your ego all the time, because, like, it's there to protect you, and a lot of times it is wrong, and it is, like, your worst enemy, because it can feed you thoughts, and just, it's easy to identify with them. Like, you're like, oh man, my brain keeps telling me I'm fat, so I must be fat. Like, it's weird. Like, so, and even though that's not true, and you're, like, perfectly fine, you might look literally perfectly fine, but your ego's telling you you're not, and it's just not true. And it's like, when you're in that rut to yourself, and I do this, like, all the time now, that you are not your thoughts, and just over and over, like, I am not my thoughts, I am not my thoughts. Because you're like, when you're, like, depressed, or you're, like, whatever in your head, is so easy to identify with whatever the fuck your brain's saying, and it's just easy to just sit there and just identify with that emotion, and you become that emotion. Like, I'm gonna have a whole different video on this, because this shit's, like, too heavy and too thick to put it on one video, but it's just, it feels weird. Like, I don't know, like, have you ever had a day where you're just irritated the whole day? Like, you're just like, man, everything's pissing you off, and you're just, like, that's you identifying with the pain body. Like, too big a concept to talk right now, but it's like, it's you identifying with your emotions, and you becoming them. Like, you recognize the anger, and you subconsciously identify with the anger, and you become the source of anger. If that makes sense, like, I really hope it conveys. Like, little more things that I written down. It's interesting talking about when you have, like, these internal battles and these internal complications. And I feel like a lot of times we have these, like, internal battles, and, like, we're fighting with ourselves, and then we look for things kind of like drugs for an external solution, when the problem resides in yourself, if that makes sense. So, like, you be having, like, internal, like your brain's fighting itself, your thoughts, you're identifying with your emotions, all that, and then you're looking for an external distraction when the problem and the solution reside in yourself, if that makes sense. Like, you hold both the problem and the solution. And if you understand, and it's weird to think that when you have internal problems, like, when you can, like, I mean, it sounds like it's like an ongoing process, but if you can get, like, your insides correct, actual external solutions, like stuff that just happens to you in real life, will affect you less. So if you have, like, your internal straight, like, if you can really get, like, your thoughts and your emotions in line, and your ego in check, and stop identifying with these negative emotions, these negative ideals, you'll find that external problems won't have much of an effect on you. You'll be able to open your mind up and like see the problem, and like it's kind of like I say, it's almost like a bird's eye view. Like you see the problem, you're like, huh, this is making me upset. Why is this making me upset? I should acknowledge this emotion instead of just identifying with it. Like, I'm angry. Slowly walk yourself through it and slowly just think over it and just be like, why am I feeling this? Like, what's going on? And just almost like have like a therapy session with yourself and kind of just separate yourself from that emotion and just address the problem with your purest self. And then the only thing I will say, like, because I can go about this forever, I'll make a whole different fucking video because I have so much to fucking say and I'm only on chapter 2. Anyway, but one thing I will say, like, just a concept for the ego so you can understand, like, a super easy way to understand, and I can explain it, is the difference between joy and pleasure. So anything that is, like, that you get from, like, say, like, alcohol or, like, any kind of substance that's, like, a short-term pleasure, any kind of, like, sexual encounter, that's purely pleasure. But when it comes to joy, there's like it's a whole different feeling. Like, have you ever had a feeling where you're like, you and your friends are hanging out and you guys are just giggling, like you got the giggles, and you're like, it doesn't have to be drug related, you can just giggling, and then you have like no conscious thoughts at all but just laughter. Like, that's all that's in your head. Like, you're just like, ah, like just laughing with your friends. You guys are just dying, tears rolling down your face, but you're not thinking about anything. You're just thinking about how funny this present moment is. And that is joy. That pure joy, that mindless just laughter, childhood, that's joy. There's a difference between pleasure and short-term happiness and joy. Like, joy is you being your purest self, not identifying with ego or any kind of emotions. You're like that moment of joy, that sprinkle, like where you're just mindlessly just enjoying, you're just like, man, I had such a good time. Like, you know why? Because you weren't identifying with your emotions. You weren't identifying with your ego. You were just being you. Like you weren't, like, when you have all these joyous moments, like you think about the happiest moments in your life and stuff, you weren't consciously thinking about, like, you weren't distracted. You weren't thinking like, oh man, I'm anxious about this, da 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 da. You were in the moment just laughing, having a blast. And it's usually, for most people, it's short-lived. Like, you have those moments of joy and you're like, man, I felt that pure bliss, but it was like only for like 10 seconds or like 15 seconds. But the more and more you work with the ego and the more and more you do emotional work and spiritual work, you can make those joyful moments last longer. You can make it easier and easier to identify with your truest self instead of your emotions. But yeah, I told you it's heavy thoughts on my head. I'm reading books, man. I'm getting educated. Who would have thought? I learned more in college, more out of college than in college. Fuck college. Don't like school. Don't sign up for school unless you want to be a doctor or you have a passion that requires a degree. If not, do not go to school. I don't care. I'm telling my kids this. Go to trade school. Sell drugs, not just kidding, but do something that's just like, find something that you're truly passionate about and chase that, because school will dig a fucking hole. I love school for the experience, but financially and job and career wise, it doesn't make sense unless you want to be a doctor. Anyway, love you guys. I'm gonna leave y'all with that. I told you, a heavy video. Love you guys, appreciate the support, and goodbye.